Hey everyone, welcome back to Discussions with Dr. G. I'm Dr. G, and today we're digging into why, I kid you not, kids are basically the ultimate vulnerable population. I know that sounds dramatic, but stick with me. Look, you might be surprised to learn that children, meaning everyone 0 to 17, actually make up about 22% of the U.S. population. There's a little under a quarter. But when it comes to being at risk, they're right up there. Because kids go through these crazy phases of growth. Like 1 minute they're these cute, tiny little newborn potatoes. And next they're sassy teenagers with opinions about everything. And honestly, guys, it happens so fast. And it means any little negative thing, whether it's lead, stress, or whatever, they feel it in a way that adults just don't. Here's why. Anatomically, physiologically, and psychologically, they are not mini adults. Their organs are still learning the ropes. Their immune systems are busy running boot camp. Their brains are wiring up. And honestly, half of them don't even brush their teeth until you yell at them. And you add in the fact that they depend on caregivers for literally everything. It's a recipe for, well, what a lot of nurses aren't ready for. The most critical windows, perinatal, infancy, childhood, and those fun tween and teen years, these are our make or break moments for health. Stuff that happens or doesn't in these windows can echo forever. Here's the thing though, health outcomes for kids aren't about luck of the draw. It all ties back to what we call social determinants of health. That's your family environment, how easy it is to actually get the medical care that you need, and whether the family can afford healthy food, and the big ones, race, ethnicity, including where you live. There's data showing that the zip code can sometimes matter more than the genetic code. Unlucky zip code, harder to access care, and often worse, outcomes. Nurses are in the thick of all of this. We're advocates, sometimes the loudest people in the room. If you've ever been to a school board meeting with me, sorry, not sorry. We educate, we prevent, we get in there with policy support and public health agencies to make stuff happen. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I got pulled into a community immunization project. It started with just one school and ballooned into a full week-long event for the whole district. It was exhausting. I broke a sandal, but the vaccination rate shot up. So it made it all worth it, really. And that is advocacy and collaboration in action. All right, so what is the next big piece? Honestly, the world around these kids, because no matter how cute they are, they can't shield themselves from social chaos. I want you to think about what happens at home first. That caregiver-child relationship is huge. It sets up how kids deal with stress, emotions, the drama of middle school, all of it. But if the parent's burnt out, stressed, or going through role strain, maybe mom's working 3 jobs, maybe dad's not there, whatever. They might be less sensitive to the kids' needs, and kids pick up on that. And that's where mental health and behavioral stuff comes in. And then there's ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. If you got things like abuse, neglect, or just general household chaos happening, it actually creates toxic stress, which is not just a fun term for a bad day. It can literally rewire a child's brain, setting them up for depression, substance use, or other chronic illnesses. You name it, it's there. And it's not just what happens at home. It's where they live too. Old houses, hello lead, or neighborhoods where crime is high, or there's no sidewalk, so kids end up glued to screens or playing in the streets. You get more sedentary behavior, fewer healthier options. Are you catching where I'm going? And I hate to bring up the P word, but poverty. Yeah, about 15% of kids in the U.S., they're living in it, or pretty darn close. Food insecurity, lack of stable housing. There's actually a wild stat. Ready? Nearly 39% of families experience some form of housing insecurity. And then, of course, you've got gaps in healthcare. Some places are just too rural, or families can't afford the copay, or don't have insurance at all. About 5% of kids are completely uninsured. All that means is malnutrition, worse outcomes for school, and all sorts of preventable health issues. No big deal, right? All right, let me give you an example. I had a family who was skipping doctor's appointments because their housing wasn't stable. The kids had some nutrition issues, but it turned out they just didn't have enough food on the table. Sometimes as a nurse, you have to pivot. So instead of focusing on just health stuff, I got them set up with housing resources and a local food pantry. This stuff is so interconnected. You can't separate it out. Okay? It's all mixed together. Social, health, everything. Honestly, community health nurses are in a pretty unique spot to catch these things in everyday encounters and actually step in and help. So let's break it down, because what's risky for a baby, honestly, nothing compared to what a determined toddler can get into. For infants, suffocation is huge. It's like 85% of injury deaths in babies. That's why we talk about safe sleep so much. It's not a conspiracy by Big Crib Mattress. Babies really do need to sleep on their backs. No fluffy stuff, and in their own sleep space. Proper car seats too, by the way. Let's not leave out unintentional injuries, since they are the #1 killer of kids ages 1 to 19 in the U.S. Yep, not rare diseases, not wild zoo escapes, just everyday accidents. And trust me, it never feels routine when you're the nurse on the receiving end. Then we've got chronic stuff. Prematurity, tooth decay. Yeah, cavities are a huge deal for kids. Communicable diseases, ADHD, autism, asthma, obesity, and the big one that people don't talk about enough, mental illness. Now, toddlers and preschoolers. Think drowning, choking, car accidents, fires, and the stuff we all dread hearing about, firearms. Little ones are wiggly, impulsive, and they have zero sense of danger. That's where parent education actually does save lives. Simple skills like CPR, how to child-proof a room, or making sure toys are the right size. Oh, and swimming lessons early can make a big difference. Then you're going to hit that magical age of 5 to 14. These are your school-aged kids. Here, motor vehicle crashes are far and away the leader. This comes down to booster seats, seat belts, and seriously, don't be afraid to insist that kids ride in the back seat. The age-old battle. But my friend rides up front. Yeah, well, I'm not your friend's nurse. Adolescence. Oh boy, now you've got firearms as the leading cause of death, which, yeah, is as alarming as it sounds. Then you add in motor vehicles, especially with brand new drivers and friends in the car, plus poisoning from drugs and alcohol. Prevention here is less about foam corners and more about zero tolerance policies, graduated driver's licenses, and family safe driving agreements. If you're not familiar, this is basically a mini contract laying out driving boundaries. And let's not forget about raising awareness about what they call the 8 danger zones for teen drivers. Quick story. I had a parent drag me into the hallway during pickup because she just watched a news story about a car accident with kids and was panicking about booster seat rules. We went over the guidelines and you could just see the tension melt away. Sometimes families just need piece by piece, clear info right when those fears strike. So whatever the age, prevention is always about meeting families where they are, answering real questions, and giving the right info at the right time. Speaking of car seats, let's talk details about getting those right across all ages, because trust me, even experienced parents are confused about those transitions. So, infants, it's rear facing until they grow out of those manufacturer's limits, usually by height or weight, absolutely not by age. Just to be clear, here in Virginia, children under the age of 2 must remain rear-facing until they reach the minimum weight for a forward-facing car seat. Then they can graduate to forward-facing with a harness, and you want to keep that going until they're about 65 pounds if you can. For school agers, booster seats stick around until they're 4'9", usually somewhere between 8 and 12 years old. And then finally, adolescents roll in with the lap and shoulder belt, but surprise, they should still be in the back until they're at least 13. Again, to be clear, in Virginia, children need to be in a booster seat until they're at least 8. So check your specific state's laws as well so that you are well versed in this topic. Now, let's shift gears to chronic conditions. For the little ones, prematurity is still the leading cause of infant mortality. Prevention involves good old-fashioned prenatal care, helping moms quit smoking, and managing chronic diseases early. Among toddlers and preschoolers, tooth decay is shockingly common. Really the most common chronic illness in children. Prevention means making fluoridated water available, teaching toothbrushing early, and pushing for sealants. Lead poisoning pops up too. There is no safe level of lead, period. End of story. So we're talking about removing lead from homes and regular screening. Then school age, it's all about early alerts on ADHD and autism spectrum disorders. Getting families looped in with state-funded supports as soon as possible. It really is a team activity. For older kids and teens, obesity rears its head, and that's as much about environment and access to food as it is about individual choices. You need school nutrition programs, safe spaces to play, and community health care. Asthma, still super common with triggers like urban pollution and secondhand smoke. Programs like the National Asthma Control Program, or NACP, actually work and lower hospitalizations. Then, of course, let's not forget the ever-popular mental health. 1 in 6 children experience mental illness, and it's linked to everything from adverse childhood events to poverty. Early recognition, behavioral health screenings in primary care, and getting parents involved is how we make a dent. As a school nurse, I once sat down with a parent to hammer out an asthma action plan, and you could tell this one meeting was going to keep that kid out of the ER, okay? Everyone got a say, and we all walked away with a plan taped inside our backpacks. Let's just say, this is nursing in the community, preventing problems before they become emergencies. All right, guys, we're almost done. So let's switch gears and really dig into what nurses actually do about all this. Some of you might think we just hand out Band-Aids and yell at folks about vegetables, and you're not completely wrong, but really nurses in the community health are doing a ton of preventative work way before anyone ends up in the hospital. For kids, that looks like screening for all sorts of things, right? Adverse experiences, exposures to environmental risks, the plain old developmental delays. But we're the ones asking, how's school going? Does anyone at home smoke? Have you got enough to eat? Because we know those answers matter. Prevention isn't just a buzzword. It's everything from immunizations and safety education, right? Primary prevention, to screening for asthma or obesity early, secondary prevention. And then, of course, there's the tertiary prevention, which is helping families manage the chronic stuff like diabetes or connecting them with mental health resources after a tough event. And when it comes to pediatrics, the number one thing that takes kids out is, drum roll please, unintentional injury. Car accidents, drownings, falls, and that goes from toddlers all the way up to teenagers. If there's one thing you want to ace for the exam or real life, it's the unintentional injury prevention. Advocacy and collaboration is another huge chunk of the job, of course. Sometimes you're more of a social worker than you are a nurse. You're the one connecting families to nutrition assistance, safe housing, behavioral health services, you name it. I once worked with an elementary school after noticing in our clinic data that ER visits for asthma were going through the roof, especially among Blacks and Hispanics. So we started an asthma education program with the teachers and the school nurse. Simple stuff like how to use inhalers and spot triggers, but it made a real dent in those visits. Health policy comes in too. You got to think about aligning your care with things like Healthy People 2030 goals or WHO recommendations. For newer nurses out there or my students who might want to thank me or maybe blame me, there are some key things you just have to know. Understand those rapid development stages, spot disparities and vulnerabilities, use evidence-based prevention for injuries and chronic stuff, and don't forget, kids are not mini adults. They need culturally sensitive, family-focused care. And sometimes, you're going to be the only person connecting them to food, housing, or the kind of support that they really need. And that truly changes a life. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next episode.